Okay, we are recording, and this time we're going to reach far into the quantum to find some answers and talk about some things that I think everybody alive would be interested in hearing. And I have Sherry here with us. She's going to be talking about the old Hawaiian healing method of Hooponopono. And this, I have studied it. I read books on it, and I tell you, I am very impressed with this method. And I would, after a bit here, I'm going to give her the floor. But there is a reason why this particular healing method works probably as well or better than most other healing methods. Because we do live in a mind-created universe. And that means that our mind creates everything around us in conjunction with the higher mind that has set down the floor and the base for us to create onto. So whatever is in our mind and what we think and what we visualize, what we are able to create around us. And not just able to, it is created whether we like to or not. If we think about crime and drugs and stuff, that's all we're going to have in our life. If we think about good things, that's what we're going to have in our life. So we create pretty much everything. So that goes even into an area. Let's say that we have an ailment or we have something in our life that we don't want. We don't necessarily have to think about what we don't want, but think about what you do want, and you start drawing that to you. There's a funnel for that from the universe into the physical existence. And that comes from your mind through the subconscious mind to the superconscious mind, which reaches into the universal mind, seeks around for a match in vibration with the images and the feeling and everything that you have sent out. When it finds the match, latches on and start bringing it back in through that funnel into the physical. I have an example of that. Some of you may know Diana. She was my co-host on another radio show that I'm not doing right now, the Universal Consciousness Show. 10 years ago, she was very ill. She was obese. She had all kinds of different stuff because of negative thinking and other things. And she started reading the books by Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza and many other leaders, including she read mine. And she started to improve. And over a matter of little over a year, she had gotten rid of all of it. She was perfectly healthy. But not just that. Her daughter was, in fact, at that time diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And the doctors told her that in about 10 years, your daughter will be in a wheelchair. There is nothing anybody can do to prevent that. When Diana started improving herself using what is very similar to Hooponopono, her daughter also became well. All the symptoms went away and the disease went away. She is now 24 years old and she is perfectly healthy, even the daughter. That all happened by the mind. They didn't use drugs or the allopathic medical system for anything. We also know the story of Joe Dispenza when he broke his back. He didn't want to do that surgery. That was very questionable. He says, I'm going home. And he went home and he visualized a healthy spine. And the spine started regenerating itself. So about a year later, he was perfectly healed, up and at work. That happened also by the power of the mind. So this is one of the reasons that let's lend Sherry our ear here, because there is some real meat to this. And Oh, I love to hear that story about Hugh Len again, Sherry, because what he did in that mental hospital in Hawaii is phenomenal. That really explains the power of it. So,
Well, I can share that story. There's a lot of magic around Ho'oponopono for me, like how it even fell into my lap. But I usually don't start paying attention to something unless I hear it 3 times. And so when I heard it for a third time, I started looking it up on the internet and found a series of videos. I believe it's 9 videos, but it's one interview broken into 9 videos on YouTube. And it's very rare that I'll find a spiritual teacher where everything they say resonates with me. You know, sometimes I'll hear things and I'm like, yes, that's truth. My spirit recognizes that as truth. My soul recognizes that as truth, but rarely everything. And so I was so riveted by this man. So I looked him up and I said, I don't care where he's at. I'm going to go there and I want to learn from him. I want to share space with him. And he was retired.
yeah.
So I was really upset about that and ended up reading the book Zero Limits. And the real pearls in that book were the letters from him to Joe Vitale. It wasn't any other part of the book really that I would recommend other than those letters from Dr. Len. But what drew Joe Vitale to Dr. Len was the story that you mentioned. And so he had heard about this amazing doctor who was assigned to this psychiatric hospital, that it was very high security. So these were the worst of the worst mental patients, and it was inpatient. So they had done horrific, heinous things to other people. And when he was assigned there, he described the building as being in complete shambles. The paint was peeling off of the walls. Even the plants around the building were dying. The trees were dying. They just couldn't keep staff there. The turnaround on the staff was so much so that they couldn't even keep a routine with the patients because so many employees were lost, and then they had to constantly hire and they were losing. But no one was getting well. And so the entire hospital was becoming overcrowded. And so he was assigned to this place. And he said as soon as he went into his office, he just asked to see all their files. And so systematically, one after the other, he would just read their files and perform Ho'oponopono on their files. And so the whole concept of Ho'oponopono is being 100% responsible. So whatever shows up in your reality, it's showing up because you caused it. And so the real idea of Ho'oponopono is to erase everything, not to manifest, but to erase everything. And when you erase it, then the abundance that comes in is beyond fathoming, because it allows the space for the divine to then design. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so he systematically went through each of the files and just started cleaning on it. I am going to excavate and find that piece of me that is a murderer or that created this man. And so he would go into it and clean, do the Ho'oponopono and the prayer, as we have said many times, is I love you. And so really giving it love, and love is the true alchemy. I've always said that. Love, real love, transcends all emotion, but it can transmute any energy and can even restructure matter. And Joe Dispenza talks about that a lot. Bruce Lipton talks about that a lot, and Dr. Emoto. I mean, this is scientifically proven. Amazing what love can do to matter. So he infuses it with love first, and then shows remorse for it. I'm sorry. And when you do that, you are taking full responsibility for the creation of it. And so you are showing remorse. I'm sorry, deeply sorry that I've created this experience. And then asking for repentance, the forgiveness. So please forgive me. And after you're able to clean that, then you are able to enter a space of gratitude because you've been given this beautiful opportunity to heal something. And when you heal it here, you're healing it for the entire collective. What's done for one is done for all, because we are one. We are many facets of the whole. And so when you clean it, you're cleaning it for all of consciousness. And so it's a beautiful gift that you're not only clearing in your own spirit, but for all spirits. And so, of course, it deserves gratitude. And so he did that, patient file after patient file, and miraculously, these patients recovered, and they were actually able to become well and to be released. And the building got painted, and employees wanted to stay, and plants started reviving themselves. It's just the energy that exuded from that place, because the healing was so powerful that everything began to right itself. And that's the abundance that he talks about, is when you heal things, it allows the divine to design. And so you really don't need to manifest, because it just comes in. When you become pure love, there's really not a whole lot that you desire or need. Did I explain that okay, or should I go more into it?
That's good. Now this goes as far as you can, you're not only healing yourself, but you're also healing other people in your environment as well. And that could even go as far as, let's say that you see somebody in your environment that is doing things that is not quite right. Let's say he hasn't been caught by the police yet, so to speak.
Well, if you've witnessed it, you've created it.
Yeah, so that would maybe bring that person back from that path onto a different, more solid path. Couldn't it be?
Right. We clear it for all. We clear it in the consciousness, and the consciousness is all that is.
Mm-hmm.
It's before creation. You're taking everything back to zero. You're cleaning it to zero. So you are taking it back to a place before it ever became conscious.
Yeah.
And so when you're taking it back to that zero, it's at the space of the void. This is before inception, before creation. And so when you take it back to that place through love and repentance and real remorse. And so I guess that's the hardest thing that people have to get through when they're practicing Hooponopono, is the being responsible part. A lot of people equate responsibility with guilt, but we are everything. We are everything. Everyone that shows up is you. And the hierarchy is actually the corruption, not the deeds. The deeds aren't the corruption. The idea that something is less than or better than is the corruption. And so, or the worthiness or less worthy or more worthy, that's the corruption. And so cleansing that takes it back to a pure state before creation. And it's really important to do that.
This is a lot easier to understand if we understand that we are spiritual beings that having a physical existence. Not even physical life, because there is no life in this. It's an existence because it's a holographic projection. The life is behind it all, creating this holographic existence. But if we think of ourselves only as physical beings, boy, this one is hard to understand, because we don't see the connection then.
Mhm. Well, everything is like this here from me to you is not dead space. It's all the continuum. I can press on it and even put energy into it to a point where you could feel that because it creates ripples. And so that's what Ho'oponopono does. But anciently, it was done on a small scale. If there was something wrong with a family member, then the entire family was gathered, and they would all take responsibility for that one member. They would all take responsibility for that ailment or that misbehavior or that disharmony, and they would all do it to clear it so that everyone would be lighter and cleared back to zero. And it was the great kahuna, it was Dr. Len's teacher that actually brought it to a bigger scale, a broader scale, and said, we can do this without anyone present. And so Dr. Len is the one that catapulted the practice into the West by doing that, by completely and miraculously turning that whole entire hospital around. And he became famous for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were murderers and rapists, and there were thieves, and there were just about everything in that mental hospital.
The most heinous crimes that you could imagine existed in those patient files, and he took responsibility for all of them to cleanse that. He did. And the way that the practitioner certificate came to me, I didn't want to be taught by anyone else. So when I found out that he was retired, I kind of boo-hooed, but just put it on the back burner. And I started trying to connect with his higher self, right? Because that's his whole practice. So in meditation, I used my mind, my mastermind, and connected with him and begged for him to come out of retirement. And that I wanted to learn this practice because I really felt that this earth plane was going to spiral out of control without this practice, because I really believe in this practice. And it was less than 48 hours later, I received an email that seemed very spammy, and it arrived in my inbox, and it said, receive Ho'opono practitioner certification for only $39, but you have to act within 16 hours. It was something really obscure, and I was like, 16 hours? This is probably a scam. I'll use my PayPal to pay for it, because if it is a scam, they'll give me my money back. And so I signed up for it, and I waited for the weekend. So I believe that was a Wednesday. It was the middle of the week. So I waited for Saturday for the weekend to come. And it was about 8 a.m. I had my coffee, and I pressed play on the first video, and they were old training videos of Dr. Len. So I was sitting there being trained by Dr. Len, and I was just mind blown. I was so filled with gratitude. It was days of training, and I did it all that night. I ended like 2 a.m. I had to write an essay. That was my final exam. So I wrote the essay and I sent it in, and I said, this is where they're going to get me, because I know that Joe Vitale was charging some like really obscene amount of money, like $4,000 for the certification. So I thought, this is where they're going to ream me. And it never happened. I got the certification, and it was legitimate. And so I am just overwhelmed with gratitude, but I knew he had something to do with that. And so it's beautiful. So in a way, yes, manifesting, but I don't spend a whole lot of time doing that. I spend more time trying to erase everything than I do trying to create something.
Now,
though I like your thinking.
What?
I said, though I like your thinking.
Yeah. what he did actually, now what he kept saying over and over again is basically, I love you. I'm sorry for the erroneous thoughts within me.
Well, whatever shows up, it could be anything. If it's an illness, I'm sorry for the part of me that created this illness.
Hmm.
So, what I normally do is try to find the part of me that would have created it. So, if you have an example, I'll show you what I mean. So, why don't you create something from my reality and I'll show you how I do it?
Well, let's see. I'm a coffeeholic. I shouldn't
Okay,
drink
so
as much.
addiction.
Yeah.
So, addiction is always about self avoidance. And so, whenever we go into a space of self avoidance where we want to numb out or do something that makes us feel good because we're uncomfortable, it's because there's a deeper discomfort. And it's usually about deep communion with self. So, I'm going to find that part of me that wants to reject me. And so, that's what I would be excavating, not necessarily addiction, because that's very surface. I want to get deeper. I want to know, like, what is the energy that creates addiction? It's self-avoidance. Self-avoidance is discomfort of self. So where is the self-loathing? Why don't I want to be with myself? Why do I want to comfort myself? Where's the discomfort? And then I would find that and I say, aha, I know what that is. This is where I feel uncomfortable. And then I give it so much love. I infuse it with love because I recognize that, yes, I do have that. And I very much know that I created that. So I love
Hmm.
you. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for any part of me that hates me, that wants to escape me, that wants to use things or behaviors to escape me. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Thank you. And you can actually feel the cell memory lifting from your body. When you can find it in yourself, you can actually find the liberation and feel the liberating happening when you find that. And it happens because of cell memory. Whenever something shows up and it triggers us, right? Especially like the guilt around, I'm not responsible for this. I never would have done this. I never would have raped somebody, right? I would
Yeah.
never do that. And then right away you feel this twinge somewhere in your body. Ooh, somewhere deep in this ancient soul of me, yes, I created this awful thing. And then I want to clean on the fact that I called it awful, because that's also a miscreation,
Yeah.
because nothing's awful. The fact that you want to name it is also something that needs to be cleaned.
Yeah. Spiritually, it is only an experience.
Right.
Yeah. So the term that I have been using is, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And the
That,
words aren't the only thing that we need for this purpose. We need to have feelings with it. We need to have meaning and maybe intention. And
the intent is everything, and I even teach that in my spiritual classes and in my private sessions. Intent is everything. You can't just emptily, say empty, like if it's a lyric to a song that you're just kind of bumbling around following. I mean, you have to really feel it. And so that's why it's so hard for people, because being responsible, they believe, equates guilt. And so guilt is an ugly thing, right? If I'm guilty, oh, then I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable, but that's just not true.
hmm.
If you are responsible, that means that you recognize the true divine power of yourself to make something right.
Yeah.
It's not an ugly thing. It's actually quite a beautiful thing.
And everything can be corrected. I don't care how bad.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Do you have any real personal success stories that you can mention without, don't mention
Well,
any?
even on just myself, yes. So for myself, I walked around with a dislocated elbow for 2 weeks. Didn't even realize it was actually dislocated. It was just painful. And being a healer, I know that there's no such thing as a physical ailment, and I'm there thinking, okay, I'm processing some emotional pain from my mother. This is where I tend to carry all this stuff from my mother. This is an extension of the heart, the arm all the way to the fingertips. This is heart space. And so this elbow was really giving me issues. And so I go to my acupuncturist and she said, Sherry, sometimes an elbow's just an elbow. Your elbow is actually dislocated. And I don't have any earthly idea how that happened, but she said, I'm going to needle it. I'm going to put some herbs and I'm going to needle it. And then she goes, and I'm going to reset it. This is kind of my jam. I love doing this. And so I was like, okay. So she had me all needled and I was laying there and I started thinking, this is going to hurt. I had dislocated my knee before. This is not going to be pleasant. So I just laid there and I started giving it love, like just really giving my elbow love. I don't know how I did this to you, but I love you and I'm sorry. And this is an extension of my heart. And I'm sorry I've done this to you. And I imagine the flow of energy moving through all the way to my fingertips with no impediments and no pain. And I said, please forgive me. I don't know what I've done, but please forgive me even of that for not knowing. And thank you. Thank you. And when she came back in, she said, have you been working on this? And I go, yes. And she said, well, it's back in place. And I said, holy shit, I didn't even know I could do that. But I did it.
Well, then that's a pretty good success story.
So, I mean, that's personal for me, but I'm constantly doing it. I'm doing it with my clients. I'm doing it. I don't watch news. I don't read the newspaper, but whenever something shows up, I'm constantly cleaning on it. When I have scenarios out in society in the store and I recognize that I had a client just yesterday that I've never had before ever. And she was referred to me by someone who's only ever seen me once years ago. So I was pretty impressed. But I think that she was expecting when she heard psychic, like some stage act, fortune teller. Well, surprise, I'm a healer. It's like really deep shit that I do. And but she sat there kind of like in shell shock the entire time with her mask on. And so I was really not even doing it aloud, just in this very quiet way, doing Hooponopono on her. And I noticed very quickly she pulled the mask down under her chin and she really softened. So what I was working on with her was the energy that she was wearing, of course, which is fear.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest symbol of the mask. Not that it's protective, it's more that it's fear.
Yeah.
Because she had no reason to be in fear in my sacred space. So I just softened that because that's what was showing up for me was the fear. And so I was cleaning on that, doing the Hooponopono around the fear, and it worked. And she even said before she left, she goes, I really don't know what the hell just happened to me. She goes, but I feel completely different. So that was good.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's still wearing her mask today, possibly, but
Maybe she grew up. I got a hold of one. I'm going to start wearing this one.
Perfection.
Yeah. I haven't used it yet, but I'm thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the biggest amount of people that you've worked on at one time as far as healing?
I had to do a lecture for medical staff here at a local hospital. And I used to be invited every year because I was a medical practitioner and I was doing like fun stuff, like GI inflammation.
Mhm.
And when I left medicine, they asked me to come do a lecture about meditation. And I really, just being away that 1 year from medicine really made it so crystal clear why I left. And also the disconnect of so many practitioners to the real reason of becoming a practitioner, which is the oath to be benevolent and do no harm.
Yeah.
And so I started cleaning on that. So I did it. And there was about 80 people in that group. I mean, I'm always working on the consciousness, and the consciousness is infinite. But that is probably the largest group that I worked on that was in front of me. So it was 80 people.
So do you think, so for instance, on Sunday, if there's 10 of us show up on Sunday, can we put our energies together and work on this virus?
We definitely could.
Absolutely.
Can we like no time for chit chat? Let's just jump right into it. Do you know what I mean?
We've already done it. It's just consciousness around it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's the whole
But it's
process.
taking responsibility for it. So what part of us really wants to
Take
purge?
responsibility.
What part of us really wants to create space? That's what created the virus.
Yeah.
We need to clear space, and so that everyone can level up. It's really, the whole idea of it is the cutting the sandbags off of the hot air balloon.
Yeah.
And so is it really a bad thing, or is it a good thing? I mean, what's the judgment around it? The judgment is really what needs to be cleaned.
Yeah.
The virus is one thing, but there's also another effect of microwave radiation poisoning, which has the same effect as COVID-19. And
exactly. And I have a very close friend in Jersey. Right. Exactly. The 5G. I have a very close friend on the East Coast in Jersey that started tracking the numbers, the COVID numbers, also with the 5G being implemented. And the numbers were higher in those areas.
And now people are starting to get bacterial infections from wearing a thick mask for all day, and they're not cleaning it. And they're being told this is COVID, but it's a bacterial infection, which you can use antibiotics for, but COVID you cannot. But what I'm thinking is,
pass right through anything you can breathe through. A virus will pass through.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you have a mask on, you're just not getting as much oxygen as you need, or as much nitrogen from the air, and you're actually breathing in CO2. You're breathing your CO2, shut down your immune system.
Yes,
absolutely.
Exactly.
But I was thinking if we went through the whole I can't pronounce it.
Hooponopono.
There we go. On Sunday with a whole bunch of us, just taking responsibility for, because I know my part in it. I certainly know my part.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
if we were to just kind of really, really branch out our own energies as a collective, as our tiny little sacred geometry that we have going on,
right?
And put that is that something? Does it work that way, or is it?
Well, what I'm going to clean on,
good.
just
Make
what you said. You called us tiny, so I'll be cleaning on that.
Okay.
Because with that comes the idea that we are insignificant.
Yeah.
But we are actually a mighty group of sacred geometry.
Okay, mighty is better than tiny. No, on tiny. See, I was thinking tiny as opposed to the grand scheme of things. Like we're not a billion people. We're 10 or 20 people at the most.
But really, I like to imagine the consciousness like a wheel, and each one of us is a cog in that wheel.
Yeah.
So we have a very specific purpose, and the wheel cannot turn without us. So
supremely mighty.
Our significance is grand,
Gestalt.
even as a one.
We have a whole Gestalt thing going on. Yeah.
And that's really what's going to help oil the wheel, really, is for us to all own our own magnificence. And when we can do that, then we recognize it in all.
Yeah.
But so many of us don't believe that we're magnificent.
I think that
we are buying into the hierarchy, and that's corruption. That's bullshit.
Yeah, I think that the virus actually has a positive purpose. Because of the virus, everything scuzzy in the society will be exposed. So I don't think we should get rid of it necessarily. Maybe we could concentrate on just cleaning it so that it can do its purpose and harm nobody. If there's a way to
create no impediments for the highest good.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm usually doing when I'm cleaning from my altar, to clear all impediments for our highest good. Mm-hmm. And so that's corruption. Mm-hmm. Corruption is an impediment, and greed is an impediment. Ego is an impediment.
Mm-hmm.
Addiction is an impediment.
Nostroya.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should do that on Sunday.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not saying
I'm
not saying yes, like I was agreeing, but I don't want to answer for you.
No, I totally maybe we should do this, and
yeah,
we will know what it feels like. Yeah, I think it's going to feel good. It'll fit in with them.
And there are other practices of Hooponopono, like eating strawberries clears the heart space, clears love. So just eating it, but it's all about intent. Just like I said, intent is everything. So I'm eating strawberries with the intent that I am clearing the hearts of all the consciousness. So I'm not just eating delicious berries.
Yes.
It's that too.
Yes.
But I am clearing the heart space of the consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I love strawberries.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Maybe you could be there with us then, Sherry, on Sunday?
Of course, I would be honored.
Yeah.
Is this like, what about with saying a blessing? If you give thanks and say a blessing before your food. Now, you can also put that blessing of consciousness into your food. When I eat this food, I will,
Right, and that's really where the
nourished
idea of prayer came. Absolutely.
Very good idea.
That's where the idea of prayer originally started. And ever since I was a little girl, I've said this thing, and I've never been taught it, but I would always say, I'm accepting you into my body to nourish me, to keep me healthy, to keep me strong. And I would always say these things. And that's soul wisdom. I was never taught that. It's the same as walking into a new space. I would always say, I'm a child of God. It is not okay for you to touch me or to harm me. And it created this shield around me. So whenever I walk into a new space, I still say it. I'm nearly 5 decades old, but I've been saying it since I was a little girl.
You are super shiny.
Oh. You're just seeing the best parts of yourself in me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that's why I bless the food and just look into the food, and I visualize the whole thing bathed in a bright white light before I eat it. So we got different ways of doing it, probably all of us that think this way.
Right. And so, like I said, love is the true alchemy. You can transmute all matter with love. So I do that every time before I drink. I mean, Dr. Emoto even proved that. If you just say, I love you, all you have to do is say,
before I drink anything, I say 3 times, or I'll say healed and well, healed and well, healed and well.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I heard that to imagine the perfect it is the best to project.
Yeah. And the thing about it too, that I get blamed for being a nuts and bolt guy, and that's fine with me, because there is a science behind all of this. And the science tells us that everything is connected. So when we help on ourselves, we help other people. When we heal ourselves, we heal other people. When we want something maybe for someone else, it shows up in our life. So it is all well, there was a word in there.
Reciprocal.
There you
Reciprocal.
go, there you go.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and that's why, even though it sounds a little corny and straight to, I'm talking to some of the people that may be watching this recording later, maybe it sounds a little corny and so on, but try it. If you try it.
You know, under the chaos, there is great organization.
Yeah.
It's beyond our fathoming. That's the point.
Mm-hmm. You know, I saw somebody commented on I was just scanning through some YouTube videos. I just wanted to get caught up on some of the news. And I saw somebody's comment. It said, "This is such a circus." And he was insulting. And I thought, have you ever been to a circus? Do you have any idea how organized a circus is to be successful? Like, okay. That's so whenever I see somebody say, "Oh, what a circus," I'm like, what a great compliment, because circuses are very organized.
They sure are.
I just thought I'd throw that one out there. You got, pardon? I didn't hear what you said.
Was that John?
No, you.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I thought. Sorry, I talked over you. Okay.
No, I wasn't talking.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Well,
maybe.
Any other good questions right now that we could possibly think of entertaining?
I have one. I was sharing with someone about the idea of shedding all of your beliefs and removing all of those beliefs takes you back to innocence, to the moment you were born or to the moment you were a child. Does that echo this idea of clearing, I guess you would say? Or
yeah, it's erasing the data. That's absolutely it. But you're going back, but what we're actually taking it back to is even before conception. Right. You want to take it back because our souls are infinite. And so you want to, what we're erasing is actually the soul. This is just surface level shit. Right. So what you've acquired in this life really is just like an oil slick on water.
The karmic time plane is on a single plane.
Right. It's a torus, actually. It's kind of like this. But so when you're accessing it, DNA. it's through now. Of course, everything is now. But we can hit backspace delete on everything. So yes, the unlearning, the erasing, and it is like whatever you've been taught about anything is limited. And so that's what you do when you go back to zero. I love how you said innocence, right? Because that's like the original state of dignity. So a child that's been less programmed, right? They can spill food all over themselves and they still know that they're lovable. That's really what dignity is. It's like, I know I'm still lovable no matter what I do. And that's what innocence is. I'm going to go into this with no expectations. No, I'm not going to try to say what this is or what it looks like or what it smells like. Right? So when you give a child a piece of chocolate for the very first time, chocolate's not attractive. It's brown. It's not even beautiful. It doesn't even really have a good smell, but they still grab for it and they're like, okay, I'm trusting, I'm innocent. Let's try it all. Let's see. And then they're like, whoa, this is like magic explosion in my body.
Figure the gateway drug.
So that's what we want to go back to, Jimmy. I love that you said that. So yeah, it's innocence. Like, can we enter every scenario that way, like without judging it? Saying, this is new. I've never seen this before. Wow, what is this?
Well, then the other piece about the healing aspect, a friend of mine suggested one thing, and it really works. If you're sending healing energy to someone, there's two parts to the question. She suggested that you send the energy through your higher self across to their higher self. And it's the higher self that actually integrates, where we think we're sending energy one-on-one. I think it has more power when you bridge it from higher self to higher self. And when someone's in trauma or you're working with someone, I have found just saying their name and the word higher self. So Sherry, higher self, Sherry, higher self, Sherry, higher self. And I don't know, that worked a couple of times. But the second question too is, which echoes that idea of people would need to, do they need to give permission to receive?
Okay, so
that's a question.
You never need permission for love. Right? So that's where intent is everything. So if your intent is love, you don't need permission. So we don't need permission to give the world love.
Right.
The universe is listening.
So, and that's actually how I work, because I do have clients, you know, all over the place. And so when I work like in India or Japan or Italy, it's always higher self to higher self, because really the human is just a suit. And any ailments, there's really no such thing as a physical ailment. That's a manifestation of a disconnected, ill spirit. And then it manifests in the physical body. So that's like the microcosm to the macrocosm, right? And then it starts to manifest outside yourself. And so it's always higher self to higher self. And it's so easy.
That you might want to say high yes self.
There you go. Or
you just
inner
feel that
self.
upliftment when you say high yes self.
Right.
Thank you.
Most of the time, I just call it whatever it is for their comfort level, because I see clients on all levels of understanding and consciousness. So spirit body, soul, energy body, higher self, however you want to do that. But I basically layer ours together. So because we are one anyway, they're layered together. And that's how I actually do that. Because there's no space between, I mean, that's a pipe dream that they're just because they're in India that there's space between us. There's not.
That's right. Any other good
I was
thoughts?
also referring to that there's a higher self, because there's the physical body, and there's the higher self, which is the astral body.
Right.
And then there's the highest self, which is the soul body.
Right.
Your light, guiding light.
That pure love frequency, yes.
Well, there's something
That's
to this
beautiful.
love.
I like the way you think too.
Yeah. Well, even Albert Einstein said something in an interview about a year before he died. He said that I've studied the universe more than anybody I know, and I found that this universe is made from the frequency of love.
It is. And that's what we're meant to return to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of impediments to that right now. So I'm doing my best to clean the impediments.
Yeah, and we got more control of our own impediments anyway than anybody else's impediment.
Well, there is only one.
Yeah. That's why cleaning other people's impediments is not that successful. Because we start with ourselves, that'll go to them anyway.
Well, if it shows up, it's always going to show up for a reason. For instance, when I was a medical practitioner, they would always come in waves, and it wasn't necessarily ailments that I was dealing with, but I would always see repeated things. Like I would have a whole slew of people who would have hormone imbalance. And then all of a sudden the next week, it would be some other issue. It would be migraines. And then all of a sudden it would be GI inflammation. And it was weird. It would come in these waves. And that's when I really started noticing like patterns in the consciousness. But even my clients, I see patterns in the things that they're dealing with. And I started paying attention like to planetary shifts and things like that. And I noticed there's influence from every single source. And it's just beautiful because that really also validates the connectedness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything. There's no such thing as an inanimate object either. I mean, this beautiful desk is vibrating energy just as I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
This is interesting. Oh yeah, I'm glad I showed up here because I didn't know this much about this particular practice. I didn't know. I thought it was just three simple lines.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So informative, and you're so free with your knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So grateful.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I was honored when Augie asked me.
well, I could think of nobody else that is actually teaching this but you, and you're good at it. So you're the one. And is there any books that people can, I speak about it in my book about spiritual science, but there are probably better books out there that you can think of where people can read more?
Honestly, I don't read things written by anyone else. I would really recommend that series of videos from that one interview.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen to him talk. And it's Dr. Hugh Lin, and it's 9 videos. And maybe I can text it to you, Augie, because I have it saved on my YouTube. But honestly, that book, Zero Limits, even if they just cracked the cover of that and read his private letters to Joe,
Yeah,
like they are pure gold.
yeah.
And because he really simplifies everything, whereas everyone else wants to mystify it so that they can get monetary gain from it, and that's twisted. And that's that's like perpetuating the hierarchy, and it saddens me. And so like really I wouldn't subscribe to any book because I have not seen one that that I really enjoyed. But the Zero Limits, his particular private letters, and they're dotted through there. I mean, Joe spent a whole lot of time in that book name dropping and like patting himself on the back.
Yeah, he did.
So, but if you read the private letters from Dr. Len to him, they're pearls.
But let's also not forget that you are a practitioner. You help people with this. You can consult with them, and you can help people with whatever challenge.
Oh, definitely. And so we are taught not to solicit it, but if we are sought, share. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
And so I do that ceaselessly. So if you ask, I will never keep my mouth shut.
That's kind of what I do with my Akashic journeys. I don't promote it, but if somebody knows that I do that, then absolutely come on in and we'll spend an afternoon together.
I put a link in the chat room it's called Laughter Online University. And I put in search for Dr. Lin and Hooponopono. It's a little page that's there. It tells that story.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the hospital story. Yeah.
So
you'll find that everywhere because that's what made it famous.
Yeah.
So it's fairly easy to find that story.
Well, thank you, folks. I'm gonna have to run.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jimmy.
We'll see you on Sunday, Jimmy.
I hope so. I think If not, all will watch. And our moon is coming up right now here in Alaska. I'm just seeing it.
Okay. All right. Well, Sherry, you got to go teach a class. So I guess we are.
My
pretty
students
close to-
are being so good, they're coming in, but none of them have said hi to me. I see
Oh.
that I see them in my peripheral just walking by.
Okay.
They're like, oh, she's on something.
She's doing something.
How do,
Okay.
Sherry, how
Take
do
care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Sherry, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, that's a good one.
My website is divinityin.me or Sherry Magdaleno on Instagram or Sherry Magdaleno on Facebook. But divinityin.me is my website. You can email me through that.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Well,
Have a beautiful
thank you.
class.
Thank you.
Yes.